Well, happy Thursday and welcome to this week's edition of Offit Kurman's Remote Rundown. I'm Jim Ries, Director of Business Development at Offit Kurman, and each week I'm joined with labor and employment attorneys Russell Berger, Sarah Sawyer, and Veronica Yu for a conversation about the latest and most relevant employment issues related to COVID-19, including advice for owners and employers on how to best deal with these issues. So there have been plenty of developments in the last week. Our governor here in the state of Maryland had a press conference yesterday, and a lot of discussion about return to work and what that means for employers and employees. So Sarah, how about you kick us off with today's discussion about return to work?
Yeah, so as I'm sure most people are aware, yesterday the governor announced that he will be lifting the stay-at-home order on Friday, May 15th at 5 p.m. and it'll be a safer at home advisory is what we're calling it now. So this is the first phase of starting to reopen the Maryland economy and getting people back to work. So, just starting to take a look at that, and it's going to be impacting retailers and religious gatherings. So it's some things are beauty salons, manufacturing, be starting to open and have to start figuring out how to open, what that's going to look like, and start this initial phase. So a lot of the guidance that we are receiving through the executive order is that employers, and as they start to reopen, and some of the conditions that they're going to be facing are that they're going to need to comply with face covering orders, that they're going to have to be sure to comply with CDC guidance. So really this week, really starting to even more see clients coming to us asking what that looks like, what their responsibilities are, what they need to do, and if they need to supply face coverings to their employees as they bring them back, and what types of changes they're going to need to make in their in their establishment as they start to reopen, and also just kind of weighing the cost benefit of opening at diminished capacity. Now that they're able to open, what does that look like as far as what's the cost benefit analysis? What's it going to look like as on the spreadsheet, so to speak, on making sure that they're able to get customers in the door and run in a whole new way and still be profitable and get back to work.
Yeah, and well, first off, you said one of my favorite words, spreadsheet. So great answer. But I mean, I think one thing, this is reopening, but it's limited reopening. So there are all kinds of rules and requirements in place for the retailers and the religious establishments that are, and the barber shops that are able to reopen now. There's specific rules about how they do that. It's not just going back to normal operations. And for those, more office-based employers, nothing's changed in this order for you at this time. But I think it's a good hint at what's to come. So as we've been talking about the last couple of weeks in this space, planning for reopening, getting a written plan together, thinking through operationally how you're going to conduct yourself, we have a sense as to what, when non-essential businesses are able to reopen, when essential businesses start having more people in the office, we have a sense as to at least what the state of Maryland thinks is a reasonable way to do that. And one of those specific rules is the maximum occupancy component. So for retailers, for example, they're limited to having 50% of the maximum capacity that the building would otherwise support. And I think that's probably a pretty good indication of a rule that might apply to other businesses when they're allowed to reopen as well. So as you're now planning for that and drafting your plan, that's probably something that you want to incorporate. And frankly, it's something we've been talking about for a while, is diminishing the capacity and having people work different days and splitting your workforce. Here's a government order suggesting as much.
And along a similar vein, it's been about a week since the SBA came out with, I'm going to refer to it as FAQ 40, which basically says if an employer offers a laid off employee his or her position back and the employee rejects that offer, that the laid off employee will not impact headcount for purposes of calculating forgiveness for PPP loans. And this week I've gotten a few questions about what should those offer letters include. And so number one, the offer letter must be in writing. If possible, I mean, not if possible, I would recommend including an employee acknowledgement, basically saying, yes, I'm accepting your offer, or no, I'm rejecting it. Whether or not they respond, you should also put a statement in there saying failure to respond by such and such a date will effectively be a refusal to return to work, so that you can document that for your file. According to the FAQ 40 guidance, it also recommends or states that you should include a statement basically saying that refusal to return to work may impact your unemployment benefits. So that's another thing that should be included in there. And then interestingly, the guidance also states that you should offer the employee back his or her employment with the same salary and wages or number of hours as his or her previous employment. And this, I mean, you should try to follow this if you can. And I know it may be complicated with employers bringing back employees at reduced schedules or reduced wages. So unfortunately, there's a lack of guidance there. So you just have to do your best at this point. But you should also be aware that if the employee rejects the offer, that you have to notify the unemployment division within 15 days. And you want to include the date of the offer, the date of the refusal, the name of the employee, his or her social security number, your company name, and your employee account number. So those are just some things to consider when you're, writing those offer letters.
Something else that I was dealing with kind of in a similar vein to what you're discussing, Veronica, is that, as this staged reopening is happening, especially on the retail side of things, some businesses are dealing with trying to figure out bringing employees back when entire parts of their business still aren't functioning because they rely on hospitality or restaurants or other sectors of the economy that still haven't opened or that are going to be still struggling for a while. And really looking at, the cost benefit of complying with forgiveness versus turning this into a loan and trying to, kind of figure out a longer term pieces of this, and also just looking at, well, if you're not going to be bringing back your entire workforce, whether you have a PPP loan or not, when you're looking at who you are bringing back, well, what do those people look like from a protected category standpoint? Are you bringing back employees, not bringing back employees because they don't have work to do, or are you not bringing them back because they have a child at home to take care of? And really having to look at those decisions and document them and make sure you figure out why you're bringing back certain people and not bringing back others, even outside of the PPP loan forgiveness. Just really having everything documented and really thinking through that process to make sure that you're not discriminating against any group of employees and that you're doing it for business reasons and documenting that.
That's a great point.
Okay, well, this seems like a good place to take a pause. Now it's time for the key takeaway part of the program. So leave us with one key takeaway from today, and we'll start with Veronica.
Sure. So I would do your best to follow the guidance that's out there. I know it's been changing a lot and new things are coming out every day, but if you do your best to follow the guidance that's in place at the time that you make a decision, then you should be covered.
Great. Russell.
Yeah, so to bring this back to spreadsheets, I'm going to mention something about the PPP. We've mentioned a couple times here about what it actually means to qualify, that you have a necessity to maintain operations. And there's some recent guidance that just came out from the SBA that says if your loan is under $2 million, there's going to be a presumption that you made that certification in good faith. And essentially what the SBA is saying is They're not really going to audit people who took loans that were less than $2 million. However, if your loan was over $2 million, you will be audited. They will look closer at it. So if you happen to fall in that category, it's probably incumbent upon you to make sure you do your homework, make sure you can demonstrate that necessity, as well as your eligibility for forgiveness. Someone is going to take a closer look at it. How close, we don't really know, but if you're in that category, it's probably worth rolling your sleeves up and making sure you have everything lined up.
All right, and for me, I would say something that we didn't mention about the reopening is that each jurisdiction is going to be different in this regard. So just because of Hogan's executive order doesn't mean that your particular county, your municipality is going to be opening up in the same way. They are going to have choices as far as their reopening plans. I know Baltimore City is speaking on that today. So really stay tuned to what your individual area is doing as well. Because each of the individual areas, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Montgomery, and Prince George's are all kind of coming up with some of their own plans as well. So that's something to keep in mind, and the ever-changing environment of all of this and how that may impact your business, especially if you operate in multiple counties or across state lines. And they're really going to be seeing a lot of differences between different regions and areas in the coming weeks.
Excellent. Okay, trivia time. We're going to start with Russell on this one. What has been your most successful home project since you've been working and quarantined at home? Your most successful home project?
Wow. So we moved a couple of months ago, and we needed to buy furniture for certain rooms in our house. And the space that I'm working in was going to be low on the list, and it shot up the list. So the most productive thing I've done is order furniture for my workspace.
Excellent. Sarah?
I'd say my most successful home project, I'm going to go back to the dog again, is that training my dog and getting him, trained on not bothering me during conference calls, being quiet and sleeping and not walking in front of my webinar like my cat does. His socialization with other dogs, other people. So, from a safe distance, of course. So I think, that's been something I've gotten to spend some extra time on, is training with him. And that's probably it'll be paying dividends for years to come, I think, and I hope.
Sounds like it. Veronica?
Okay, so disclaimer, my fiance is a police sergeant, so he's been working this whole time and I've been working this whole time. So from a handyman perspective, that's a big zero. But yesterday, we went grocery shopping together, which is a big win. So there's an equal amount of healthy food and junk food. So I think that's an overall win.
And you're the one who eats the junk food, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been this week's edition of Remote Rundown. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
Bye, guys.